Today we are going to discuss about property rights versus intellectual property rights. So the first idea that we should have is regarding property and what do you mean by property rights? So property rights can be corporeal or incorporeal. Corporeal means something that is tangible and corporeal which is untangible which you cannot see. And how you define property? Property is an object of legal rights. Property rights are called a bundle of rights because under property rights you have the right to ownership, right to alienate, right to possess, right to use, right to destroy, etc. So in legal parlance, property refers to the complex legal relationship between man and things. And because of that reason, property rights are capable of being monetarily valued. Now, under property rights, we have the ownership, transfer, and possession of tangible property. And under property rights, one portion of property rights is incorporeal rights, and among the incorporeal rights, we have the right called intellectual property rights. And intellectual property rights are called right in re propria over immaterial things, over things you cannot see, over things you cannot touch, over things you cannot acknowledge, but then it exists somewhere, and that is called intellectual property rights. Now, what is intellectual property as such? So, in ancient Greece, there was a concept where the bakers, when they found out new recipes, only they had the monopoly or they had the exclusive right to use those recipes when compared to other bakers or anybody else. So, basically, if you look at the history of IP, we can go to ancient Greece and find that such a thought process occurred there. Then thereafter, through patents, through creating exclusive right of usage of inventions, through European Enlightenment, IP became a vogue in the world. And property of the IP is actually defined as a property of the mind product of a man's brain, or also known as knowledge goods. The word knowledge goods was used in Bayer Corporation versus Union of India, the case. And basically, you have something in your mind which is totally unique and different from others, and you have to derive some kind of benefits out of them. So, you need protection to use it exclusively, and that is why intellectual property comes into being. They are, because of that reason alone, they are invisible, intangible, and incorporeal. Now, what are the importance of protecting intellectual property is that it is important for progression of science, technology, arts, literature, etc. And all these creates a reward or creativity and thereby causing some kind of benefit to the owner or to the author. And nations started giving statutory acknowledgement to economic rights of creators as well. And IP assumed importance subsequent to the formation of WTO, World Trade Organization, and WTO recognized TRIPS as a basic obligation to be performed by the member states, and India is also a member of WTO. Now, what are the economic justifications for IP? First one is, as I've already said, incentive. Incentive means there is some kind, by there being the existence of a law that protects IPR, there is actually an incentive to the authors, to the prospective authors or to the prospective owners to create something new, out of the intellect through the brain. But because of that, in that incentive is actually a positive motivation for the economic development. Next one is reward. Obviously, there's an incentive. These incentive and reward are simultaneously used. So obviously, you will get a reward in the form of exclusive usage. Consumers need to pay more to get your things, or some kind of monopoly over the market, etc. Next one is prospect. Now, IP is a proliferating regime in India, and obviously its prospects are going on increasing day by day. So its prospects are also very fundamental and instrumental in economic development of the country. And next one is Schumpeterian theory of innovation. This is propounded by John Schumpeter, and he was a famous economist and intellect, and he said that the economy is very dynamic. It does not stagnant, it will not stay same forever. It goes on changing, it's very turbulent. In such a situation, creative destruction is the key word. Creative destruction means that it everything incessantly birth and declines. It birth and declines. So this is a constant process in the business cycle, and to keep this cycle in its most smoothest flow, because of that reason, there need to be dynamic growth, and there need to be protection of IPs so that new inventions come and the old ones die out. Next one is Marxist theory. This is a negative theory in the sense that it is not justifying IP. In fact, it is in defense of IP by saying that Marxist theory is always in presumption of, or always envisages the uh, economic wealth being concentrated in fewer hands. They are against that concept. But then IP creates monopoly over certain goods or services or certain ideas. So in such a situation, the Marxist theory is against it because of the reason that it is not making the things, the goods or the wealth available to all in equal proportions. So that is one negative justification for IP, or justification against IP. Now, basic difference between property and IP is that intellectual creation is protected under IP. So, for protection of IP, the intellectual creation should be expressed in some discernible way to be protected. For example, if an author has certain ideas in his head, he has to show it in some book or in some films or something like that. There should be some manifestation in a physical form. Only they can be protected. Of course, IP is the intellect of the man, but then for it to be protected, it should be covered. It should come packaged in some kind of physical product or service. Now, if you look at the definition, an authoritative definition of IP, you can look at the Article 2, Clause 8 of WIPO 1967, World Intellectual Property Organization, and they have given a wide definition regarding what IP is. Like, it can be literary, artistic, scientific, all the inventions, performances, discoveries, designs, trademarks, etc. Next one is IPR theories. IPR theories are mainly four. First one is utilitarian theory by Jeremy Bentham. He says that there should be greatest good for the greatest number. So the more incentive and more reward you give, the more the inventions will be, the more IPs will be created, and it will be for the greatest good of the greatest number, because it is ultimately aiming at the holistic development and the growth of our economy as such. Next one is labor theory. It is propounded by John Locke, and he says that the labor of a man is adding value to a common thing. If he is adding value in one way or the other, a scientist is creating an invention or creating a machinery. He is adding value using his intellect to some random things in the earth. So, such an value addition, that process requires adequate reward, and thereby value addition, he is acquiring natural rights of the fruit of his labor. All the labor should not be wasted. It should be duly paid off. All the fruits should be duly paid off. So therefore, IPR, that is protection of IPs, is the need of the hour. Next one is personality theory propounded by Immanuel Kant, Hegel, Fisher, etc. And these jurists say that if a man puts his will to anything in everything he makes, he acquires an absolute right of appropriation. That is, if some kind of contribution is there to some kind of effort, if you're giving some effort to something, then you need something in return. There is an absolute right of appropriation. Fisher had propounded four more theories, four more essential elements for protection of IP. First one is privacy, next one is individual self-realization, identity, and benevolence. So anything that he is making out of his own efforts, his own power, his own labor, that requires privacy and that requires an exclusive usage by the people he deems fit to use. Next one is intimate connection between the author and the works. So obviously there is an emotional connection between the author and the inventions or the works that he is doing. So obviously that also needs to be given some kind of reward or benevolence in return. Next one is social planning theory. That is a policy theory which is not proposed by anyone as such. It came as such, and it is mainly for the social welfare, for the social development, etc. That is for the general well-being of all the people, because obviously the usage of these inventions and all these in works, etc., will always be for the benefit of the larger good. Next one is a constitutional perspective. For property rights, right to property had been a fundamental right, but now it is a legal right or a constitutional right. Earlier, Article 19, Clause 1 said right to acquire, hold, and dispose of property. Under Clause F, and Article 31 had read as compulsory acquisition of property. Now, these were repealed by the 44th Amendment, and now we have Article 300A, which says that no person shall be deprived of his property save by authority of law. Now, for intellectual property rights in our constitution, we have the 7th schedule, union list, entry 49, patents, inventions and designs, copyrights, trademarks, etc. The union government has the right to legislate over that. And under entry 97, for the residuary powers, the union government is authorized to legislate upon GI plan varieties in integrated circuits, etc. And in a case, entertainment network versus super cassette industries, the Supreme Court had said that the copyright owner, the right of a copyright owner to expel all the others from usage of his works is similar to that of a landowner to file a suit for trespass against all the people who is trying to interfering into his property. So basically, all the property rights and intellectual property rights are same in the sense that only the owner can decide who should use it and and how it is to be used. So it is similar, only thing is one is corporeal, the other is incorporeal. So that's all regarding this lecture. I'll come back with next one.